Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Red Team Village Declassified Web Application Hacking 101. This is an essentials course. It is meant to be for a beginner, someone that has never been or never have experienced any work in web application hacking. You're probably going to ask, why would I want to do application hacking? Or you have an idea. So web application hacking has a lot of things, a lot of capabilities. It's a gateway to a lot of different careers, including bug bounty hunting, which is a really big thing. Companies pay a lot of money for you to be able to look for issues in their websites and databases and systems that they have exposed on the internet, and they pay good money for you to find vulnerabilities. Doesn't even have to be a very complex vulnerability. It could just be some type of input validation thing that can maybe lead to some cross-site scripting or something. Those type of bugs people are finding all the time and cashing in on them. Some of them are pretty low dollar, down to $500. Some of them are some of the more complicated ones are in the thousands of dollars. A lot of people make a really good living off of bug bounty hunting, and you can too. The other reason you might be interested in this is your company has a bunch of programmers, or maybe you're a programmer and you want to learn more about doing validated code. So this course will help you from the start out in the very beginning of that career. So I'm gonna have to do the disclaimer at the beginning of this. So this training is intended for educational purposes only. If you attempt any of these techniques without proper authorization, you're likely to get caught. And if you're caught engaged in unauthorized hacking, most companies will fire you and or place you under arrest, claiming you're doing it for research or for security or for practicing or learning is not going to be a good excuse for them. You basically could end up destroying some valuable data on the corporate network. At the very least, you become an untrusted member of the team because they're worried about you going rogue and doing weird things. So my suggestion is use this lab guide and the VM and work on those. There's a lot of frameworks included in this VM that's up on the website, and continue learning and building your skills. So this website is EvilCorp.biz, where we're hosting all of most of the program is there. And the reason that we used that was we were kind of doing a pun on the whole, every big corporation's evil. So if you want to learn more about this, just go to number 3, Web App Hacking 101. Click on that. It'll take you to the main web page that will have a lab guide, the one I'm going through right now. It also has a VM that you can download. This VM is based on Debian. Its core is Debian. It is Kali Linux, a certain version of Kali Linux, and it's RAR'd up. Basically, you can use 7-zip or unrar to unrar it, and the password's root there. Download this machine before you get started or before you do the lab. So back to the lab guide. So what we're doing is we're teaching you basically to go from a very new person with very little skills when it comes to web app hacking up to maybe a medium level of skills. So this is a 101 course. If you've done anything with any other type of web app hacking, this will probably just be a little too easy for you. We intended this course to be the first part in a series of courses for learning web application hacking, and then venturing into the back end of the system, like SQL injection on the back end and stuff like that. So if you follow along with this, you'll see in about another month, we'll post an update to the VM and an update to the lab guide that will have a lot more SQL injection type stuff in it, and other injection types. So you don't have to download our VM. You can build your own test environment. We included everything in this lab guide that you need to be able to build your own lab environment. If you're in a country where the internet's terrible and you already have Kali, you can just download the scripts and use those. and run the VM. So this is a virtual operating system. What you're going to download is a VM. It'll run under VirtualBox, or it'll run under VMware Workstation, VMware Fusion. You should be able to run it under any of those. So what is a VM? A VM is a computer file. They call it an image. It behaves a lot like a computer because basically it is a computer. You can run multiple virtual machines simultaneously on one machine. So if you look on background here, I'm running VMware Workstation, and I have a whole host of different VMs here that I'm hosting. And right now I have like 2 VMs up, but I can run more VMs. The only difficulty with that is every VM that I start, I take memory away from my main machine that I'm running and when I'm doing other things on. So you could get to a point where you have too many VMs loaded and everything's acting sluggish. Because remember, these VMs are basically carving services out of existing systems. So including memory, hard drive, and CPU time. So these are things that are abstracted from the actual host, carved out. And like I mentioned, the more that you build, the more degradation you'll see in your system. So here's links to the different software. VirtualBox is free. You can download it from Oracle. VMware Workstation Pro is it's not that expensive, but you're going to have to pay for it. And VMware Fusion is for MacBooks. So if you have a Mac, you run that. You can also run this under Hyper-V or KVM. And then there are some VM solutions online, including Microsoft's Azure, and under Amazon, you can run it under Amazon as well. So that's the virtual machine. I'm going to show you the comparison between virtual machine and container. This entire lab is built on a lot of containers. A container is an abstract of an application running in a virtualized operating system. One or more common container types is Docker. A container is a standard unit of software packages up to code and all of its dependencies, so the application runs quickly and reliably from one computing environment to the next. So to put this simply, you can see the difference here between a virtual machine and a container. A container is not reliant. A container is the application, basically, not the operating system. It uses the underlying operating system for all of its capabilities and functions. Whereas in a virtual machine, everything, the OS is loaded, the application's loaded, and all of them have that dependency on an entire machine. And then those run on a hypervisor and then your physical infrastructure. Whereas your containers run on top of Docker and then the host operating system and then the infrastructure. So you notice the difference missing here is a hypervisor. So like I mentioned, almost all of the systems that we have on here, all of the exploitable VMs and tools and everything are built into containers. So you'll get used to starting and stopping containers. It's pretty easy. We're using a Debian platform, so it's basically service Docker start or system control start Docker. Those two will start it, and then the same thing with stopping it, service Docker stop. Will work as well. So what we've included in the VM that you downloaded was exploitable VMs. You can download the Metasploitable 2, which has been out for a really long time. It's an awesome framework. It has a lot of relevant material on it. The OWASP Matilda Day and the DVWA, the Damn Vulnerable Web Application. Those are 2 very popular ones. If you're getting into a lot of PHP, the PHP MyAdmin VM also is pretty awesome. And the credentials are here. Metasploitable 3 is a little bit more complicated because it uses Packer and Vagrant, and it has a lot of dependencies. So if you're running on Debian, I have not found a container of this yet, so you'd basically have to install this directly onto the system. But it ends up running a Windows 2003, I think, instance. So it's pretty cool. But like I mentioned, has some dependencies that might be a problem for you if you're new starting out on this. And then the OWASP Juice shop is pretty cool because it's set up like a regular store that you would find on the internet with products and services and a checkout card and all that stuff. So pretty cool to look at that. This you'll want to get into later on down the line when you're working on it. there is a Docker container for the Juice Shop. I do show it here. It is not hooked up. It's not linked in the script file that I'm going to provide for you in the lab. And then there's also a self-healing version of it that allows you to basically run through some exercises and then reset it. So that's pretty cool as well. A new system that's out is the DVNA, the Damn Vulnerable Node.js. A lot of websites are running this now, so I thought that would be relevant to throw that in here, is maybe the next step towards, after you finish this lab guide, start looking into that framework. I did mention Websploit. Websploit would probably be your next step after doing this lab, moving over to that one. This is by Omar Santos, a friend of mine, and it includes probably about 50 containers with a lot of different vulnerable software and frameworks in it. I think he said something like 500 different exercises are available to run on that. So that might be your next step after here. I do mention a WAF, web application firewall, only because as you continue down this path of web application testing and looking for vulnerabilities, you're invariably going to run into firewalls and WAFs. And what WAFs do is protect applications that may be coded kind of crappy or where they took too many shortcuts. And it basically acts as kind of like a buffer between the user or the attacker and then the actual back-end system. So this talks a little bit about it and shows you a little bit about how you can test it to see if the system that you're going to look at potentially testing is behind a WAF. It tells you that, for example, this one says that our website is behind Cloudflare, and Cloudflare is providing those WAF capabilities. So pretty cool technology that you'll be eventually getting into. So the two frameworks that we're mainly going to work with in this lab are BWAP and WebGoat 7. So BWAP's an extremely buggy web application. It's old. I can't tell you how old, but it's in its third revision, and it's been out for a while. It is a great starting point if you're just getting into web application testing and wanting to do more with bug bounties. And WebGoat 7 is a deliberately insecure web application. There's WebGoat 8 out now. I specifically have 7 listed here, and we do exercises with 7 just because we're trying to stay away from tools as much as possible and teaching you the hands-on components of this. The next iteration of this guide, part 2, will get into more tools, which you'll see will come in handy and shortcut a lot of the stuff that you're going to be doing by hand here. So what about red teams? So a lot of people have misconceptions about red teams. Red teams work hand in hand with blue teams to improve a corporation's posture when it comes to cybersecurity and whatever they have external facing. Red teams in this guide, you're going to find out about red team adversarial tactics, and part of that is techniques and procedures, TTPs, and they'll be mentioned throughout this course. And it'll talk a lot about red team effective red team operations and communications that are necessary for a red team to work closely together and provide that value to the corporation that they're able to defend themselves and their blue team is able to defend themselves. The purpose of the red team is not to go and like beat the heck out of the blue team. It's to make sure that the blue team can see the attack happening and figure out better ways to detect it and then be able to respond to it. So within this guide, you're going to see a lot of different things around vulnerability assessments, penetration testing, runtime testing, code review, and then red teaming includes a lot of these components together. A risk assessment is commonly listed as part of a security testing. It's not included in this list because a risk assessment does not actually test anything. It's just a list of perceived severities of different risks, like after they do the vulnerability assessment, they provide that and then they go through it. So red team methodology is shown you right here. We're not going to get into a lot of this other than to say once you get into doing more red teaming, you're going to spend a lot of time on reconnaissance and weaponization before you kind of go through the rest of these. There's a lot of tools now that basically help you, do point and click of delivery and exploitation, but you kind of need to learn those as you go through red teaming, and part of that's like exploit development. So this training course can be attained online at evilcorp.biz. The website has a wealth of materials, including shortcuts and other codes that you can use to help when you're doing testing. So the first chapter we're going to cover on web application vulnerabilities is HTML injection. An HTML injection takes place when you've come across a form that asks you for a user ID and a password, or maybe your first name and last name. And what you basically do is, instead of putting in like legible characters like Fred Sanford, you end up putting in some HTML code and try to get the web form to interpret that. And then if it does, then you actually start crafting more and more complicated HTML code, so that until you get it to break and get you data that you're looking for, either from the back-end system or within the system in the front-end system that may have access to data that is available that way as well. So there's two main types of HTML injection: stored HTML code, which happens like in drive-bys, and then reflected HTML injection, which is the first thing that we're going to talk about, which is basically code that happens when you visit a website or someone's messing around with your web browser. You're going to see that it's very easy to clear up. Stored HTML code, a little bit more complicated because it's on the web server side. It's being executed every time somebody browses to that page. Reflected HTML injection types are get, post, and the URL type. This kind of shows you what an HTML injection flow is. The attacker basically injects malicious script into the web application. The attacker sees my cool pictures from the victim, basically. So that's kind of one way. The victim can see a login screen like this. It says, hey, here's all of this stuff. Your username and your password, log in here. So this kind of almost like similar to a man in the middle. And then you go ahead and put the data in, and then guess what? That data ends up getting sent to the attacker. So that's kind of the point of reflected HTML injection. So I'm not going to go through all of these. I suggest that you read these closely, because they do cover a lot of the methods which I talk about here, including the trace method used to echo contents of an HTML request back to the requester. And then I talk a little bit about this right here, where I showed a Wireshark capture. Well, this is kind of like the header. You can grab this with Burp Suite, but I do have an analysis farther down in here. So the very first lab that you're going to do is in chapter 2. It's on page 15. This one's basically to determine which method is used by a website. You can start with checking the source code of the web page by right-clicking on the page and doing basically inspect the web page. And you can download the prepackaged machines like I mentioned on the website. When you go to log into the website, it's going to add I added this in here because if you're not familiar with a VM, you're going to download the VM, expand it, and then you're going to launch VMware Workstation or VirtualBox, and you're going to do File, Open, and you're going to look for this red team VM. And then you're going to click on the power button and power the machine up and answer the question that says, was this machine moved or copied? You basically tell it that it was copied, and it'll set it up using your local network interfaces. To log in, once you get the machine up, you're going to log in to the red team VM with user and then tour. The middle here is a 00, so it's not 00 like in the default one. So you'll log in with root and tour, and you'll be right into the VM. So after it launches, and then you can bring up the web browser for more information. So one of the things that we worked on was a script that we begged, borrowed, stealed, and stole and modified and put together from all over the place. Is this red team lab.sh script. It's going to take some of the fun out of out of trying to run each one of these individually. So I'm going to go ahead and bring that up here real quick. I thought I had a window open already. So let me make this a little larger for you to see. I kind of do ifconfig always on the machine to make sure that I do have an IP address that I'm getting out. I obviously was because I was hitting the website. I'm going to try to make sure that this screen actually sizes a little better so you can see what's going on. Hopefully you can see that. PWD shows where I'm at. So I'm en route. This is where I want to be. I'm going to look at the directories. I do see Red Team Lab in there. So I'm going to change into the Red Team Lab directory. And then if I look in there, I see the script that I was talking about, the redteamlab.sh. So you can go in and you can look at the script with more, but the Red Team, Red Sox, that's funny. So to start this, we're going to do a dot slash, and then Red Team. I'm using tab complete in case you're wondering why it ends up going out so fast like that. And I do mention that here. You should see, so after that, you change into the directory of Red Team Lab, which we did. And then to start the BWAP application, which is in a container, we run the script, start, and then BWAP. So pretty simple, start, and then BWAP. So basically what this does is it'll punch in some information into the host file so that when I browse to just that IP address or just the name BWAP, it will automatically bring it up instead of me having to look around for the application. So a little bit of a shortcut thing there for us. And then it tells us the username and the password, B and bug. I mean, that's not super complicated there. So now we're going to bring up our web browser, and I created a shortcut for you right here for BWAP in the installation. You click on it. It says installation. Click here to install. I click install. It says that the database already exists. Of course it does because it's been on the VM. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to log in. So we're going to log in and we're going to use B and bug and log in. And now we have our menu down here. It's kind of interesting. It has two menus. The second one's up here on the top. I typically use this one rather than that one down there. So now following along in the lab guide, it says all activities going forward will be done inside the VM. So as you see, my web browser is inside the VM and I'm browsing inside the VM. I executed all those commands inside the VM. That's important because I've seen some people launch a web browser on the outside off their regular workstation and not get anywhere. If that's happening to you, take a look and see if you don't have your window expanded for VM, and that could be potentially the problem. If you try starting BWAP and you end up at a Chinese website, it's a good indicator that you missed a step, usually not performing starting BWAP. So if you don't do what I just showed you by clicking on the installation for it and then do the installation and then logging in, if you try to go to BWAP on its own, it's going to take you to a Chinese website. I don't remember exactly what was on the page, but you probably don't want to go there. So this shows you that I clicked there, the installation, then I logged in. My current security settings were set to low. If you look, they're set to low right here. It's matched up right here. The first actual lab is a simple get HTML operation. So after taking the inputs as it's reflected on the web page, this is called HTML entity encoding, and it renders the HTML code. So the server attempts to rectify the HTML injection process. So we're going to see that here. We're going to select HTML injection get. So pretty simple. Go here. It's the second one down. I mean, so this top one is a heading of what type of thing we're in. We're in injections. If you keep scrolling down, you're going to see A2 is now broken off in session management, and A3 is cross-site scripting. So each one of these exercises that we're going to do under here is under A1 to start out with. So I do select that. I mentioned a note here. Every time you select a new bug, reset and log back in. I think that's the easiest thing to do to ensure that you're not ending up with a polluted environment. So I'm going to have my settings set to low. It tells me it's low. So I'm fine with that. So I'm going to hit hack. And now what comes up is a first name and a last name. Like I mentioned, you're going to see all kinds of weird forms as you continue down this path. So what we want to do is here we want to enter our first name, red team, and village. And then we're going to hit go. And basically all this form does is reflect back the information that we gave it. It says welcome red team village. So it took the first name and the last name and put them together. So pretty easy. One thing you can try is I'm not going to go through this now, but you can try selecting this as low, medium, and high and see what your results are. My suggestion is do every single lab this way. Select, do the lab in low, and then reset the lab, and then do it in medium, and then reset the lab, and then do it in high, and see what your results are every time you do this. So I'm basically showing you here a very simple reflected get where the page is reflecting back the information that we put in. So I do mention a couple of observables here. 2.18 is an observable. You can just follow along and take a look at this. I do show a capture from Wireshark, so you can see what's actually going on with the actual like conversation between my workstation and the website itself. So pretty interesting. But I wanted to show you here that we're calling this HTMLI_get.php. So we do know this is a PHP framework on the back end. If we were to right click on the page, we would see we would see how HTMLI.get.php is being used and the method is get. So, which is obvious because that's what we selected in the method that we were using. You're welcome to set up a Wireshark sniffer and go through every one of the exercises that way. More than likely positively you're going to see each one of the PHP files and whether it's a get or put. So now you can see the HTML fields and the format that you can enter in the command line. So you should have a better understanding of how this form works, right? So I mean, it's pretty clear here that the HTML code showed us we're expecting first name and last name, and then we use this method to call it, and then we actually put in first name, and then last name. Here I actually, in this thing here, I actually just did first name and last name. So in the form. So now let's reselect everything. I'm going to go back to here, and I'm going to go back and sorry about that. You can log out and log back in if you want to, but I'm not going to do that. I'm going to just select a new bug. I'm actually going to reselect this one. I'm going to leave it on low, and then I'm going to hit hack, and it's going to bring me the form back up cleared. As you can see, no more red team village down here on the bottom. Pretty simple. And now I'm going to try this cool one. This is a little bit more complex than the typical first starting ones, but all I'm going to do is copy this from the guide and put it in here. Yikes. And for some reason, it's not copying between my guide and the machine, but it's pretty easy. I can just use the lab guide and type it in like I have it here. So I'm going to do, for a first name, I think I'm just going to do a red team. And then on the bottom part, I'll go ahead and put the injected code. I'm going to use a marquee, which if you know what a marquee is, it's basically a scrolling banner. And then I'm going to put hacked by red team. And with any HTML code, you close the HTML code out with a /. And then you close it with the bracket. Then we hit enter, and now guess what we see? We see welcome, which is built into the form, and red team, which I put in first name, and the marquee part, which is scrolling on the bottom part, which is saying hacked by red team. So this isn't a real hack. It's more of just basically messing around with the form to get it to do that. And we can do something similar to that, trying it with medium and high and see where we get. So here I show basically the same thing. The setting there was low, so you can try setting it in medium and seeing what you get. Currently our setting is set to low, so let's try the same thing with medium. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. Probably should have captured that thing. So captured the text I put in, but I'm going to do medium. I'm going to do set, and I'm going to go ahead and select get, reflect to get, and then tell it hack. Now it is set to medium. It tells me in the security level right here, set to medium. And there I entered red team and hacked by red team with the marquee. I'm set to medium. It says right here. I'm going to hit go. And now what happened was the form, because of the medium level security that is implemented on this form, it said, okay, you can't do that simple overflow, that simple injection. I'm going to validate that is correct. I'm going to display it any way I can. So it basically did take the marquee and displayed it that way. So so now a way to bypass it, one way to bypass that security measure is doing URL encoding. So we're in our on our web page. I have it built in, so you can either go to this. You can either go to this website if you have the internet. You can go to it and enter the code here, and it'll give you the output code. I built this lab so it could be done offline. So if you're like on an airplane or whatever, wherever you can basically run this. So on your main page, just hit F9, and it'll bring up this quantum hack bar, which is awesome. It allows you to basically do encoding and decoding there. So we basically are going to do a URL encode. So we're going to take what we were typing in with the marquee, and we're going to paste it in, and then we're going to have it encode it for us. So I'm going to select URL encode. The string I'm going to give it is the marquee string that we were doing earlier. We're going to do marquee and start like that. Let me move this a little to the side. Hopefully you can see my screen okay. And then I'm going to do hacked by red team, and then I'm going to close out the marquee like so. And then I'm going to hit enter. And now what we have here in the middle is the URL encoded information. A lot of it you can see is still plain text, but I think the tags here are what changed. So I'm going to copy that. I'm going to paste it in here. Oh, actually, I'm going to reset my form back to medium, set. I'm going to go ahead and do get. I'm going to tell it hack. It's going to give me a brand new form. I'm going to go ahead and paste that here. And I'm going to paste it here as well. And then I'm going to do go. And now look, we ended up bypassing the checks in the medium level security that are in BWAP. And we end up with our scrolling marquee there. So before I go, I'm going to tell you a couple things. You can download this guide directly into the VM and use the guide direct in the VM, so you can cut and paste between the lab guide and the and BWAP. But one thing I will let you know is that in some cases, when you do a copy and paste, some of the letters are not properly interpreted properly. So what you're going to end up having to do is manually type in the entire command. So if you end up running something and it gives you some weird results, clear the form again, like I showed you, completely clear it by setting your security level and then selecting the method, the bug that you're going to test, and then hitting hack. It should tell you right here your current level, and now the form's clean. So you want to make sure that's done every time you do an exercise. But if you end up with some weird results and the string is like pretty weird, try manually entering in the semicolons or the colons or the brackets or whatever, because it's possible that your right click and what's in the lab guide is not being interpreted properly. So you might see that going forward. So I just wanted to make sure that you understand that as you go forward. So now start on the next one with reflected get and see what results you have. This is a basic redirect. This one's going to show you how easy it is to redirect somebody to another website. You've probably browsed to some place and then all of a sudden you started getting all these weird pop-ups and being being pushed to other places that you had no intention of going. A lot of that is done with this method right here, doing an href and injecting it into the site. And if you end up getting into a blog or something like that and you paste this into a blog and someone opens up the blog and clicks on your post, you can actually, if the blog is vulnerable, you can actually have the blog automatically redirect the person to it. And we actually will go through that later here in the guide. So anyway, thank you for watching. Continue working on the lab guide. If you run into any problems, let all of the people in Discord know. We've got a lot of really good people there helping. Thank you, and until next time.